I was 24 years old when I was told I was dying of cancer. 3 different doctors said the same 6 words to me. You have 6 months to live. Those 6 words changed who I am. It was 1990, and I was in St. Louis on a consulting project. I was one of the healthiest people I knew. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I was an ex-college wrestler and a competitive triathlete. My health was the last thing I was worried about. Then one morning I woke up having trouble breathing. The doctor thought it was bronchitis. He gave me antibiotics and told me to get some rest. But 2 weeks later I was worse, so he ordered a chest x-ray. He called me back into his office that same afternoon. He didn't waste time with small talk. The doctor put my x-rays on the screen and traced a shadow about the size of a softball in the center of my chest. Your lungs are clear. That's not the problem. This mass is so large, it's pinching your airway closed. That's why you're having difficulty breathing. Given its size, location, and your age, I'm almost certain you have stage 4 cancer. I thought I heard him wrong. This had to be some kind of mistake, but the doctor continued. I was a thoracic surgeon for over 30 years. There's no benign condition that presents like this. Doc, be honest with me. Am I going to be okay? He didn't sugarcoat it. I'd say you have 6 months. After I left the doctor's office, I sat in my car and just stared outside. I was shell-shocked. I decided I wasn't going to tell anyone until I got a second opinion, especially my parents. A few days later, I met with the head of oncology at Barnes Hospital, the best hospital in St. Louis. Different doctor. Same answer. 6 months. Only this time, I believed it. For the next few days, I was just numb. And if I'm being honest, feeling sorry for myself. I've been an athlete my entire life. Being healthy wasn't something I did. It was who I was. And I was the one dying. The unfairness of it was suffocating. Eventually, I called my parents. My mom went straight to denial. Don't be ridiculous. You're 24. I can't handle it if it's cancer, so it can't be cancer. I love you, Mom, but not helpful. My dad, he was already making phone calls. Those doctors don't know anything. I'll get you into Sloan Kettering and clear up this nonsense. My dad knew a head nurse at Sloan Kettering, Memorial Sloan Kettering, one of the best cancer hospitals in the world, and got me in with one of the top oncologists. I flew to New York the next week. When we sat down with the doctor, he went through my file in complete silence. After what felt like forever, he slowly closed the folder, looked up at me and said, "I'd get your affairs in order." I looked over at my parents. They were doing their best not to show me how scared they were. But my mom was shaking, my dad's jaw clenched tight. As for me, I've been thinking this had to be wrong. There's no way I could have cancer. But when a top oncologist at Sloan Kettering tells you you're probably not going to make it, you believe him. When I got back to my apartment, I sat alone on my living room floor and just sobbed. Not because I was scared exactly, but because I was forced to look at my life like it was already over. That's when I asked myself one simple question. If I die, what would be different? The answer was clear and brutal. Nothing. Not a single life I could point to and say, that person is better off because I was here. I realized I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid my life wouldn't matter. So I made a promise to myself. If I somehow survived, I was going to make damn sure my life meant something. I was going to show up for the people in my life. That I could control. A week later, I was back in Sloan Kettering, this time for a biopsy. It was only supposed to take 30 minutes. An hour went by, 2 hours, 3. My parents were starting to panic when the surgeon finally came out of the operating room. And to everyone's surprise, he was smiling. "It's not cancer. Your son is going to be fine." It wasn't a tumor. It was a massive cyst. So rare there were only 2 documented cases like it, which is how 3 doctors could be so certain and still be wrong. As I hugged my parents in the recovery room, I was laughing through the tears. The relief I felt was euphoric. But the hospital wasn't done with me yet. Here's a part of the story I don't often tell. Because I was in surgery for so long, they kept me overnight. That meant I was staying overnight in a cancer hospital, surrounded by people that didn't know if they were going to make it. And I knew I was going to be fine. I remember lying in my hospital bed when they brought in my roommate. He was about my age. I noticed the distant look in his eyes before I noticed his missing leg. Later, I learned it was bone cancer. We didn't talk much, but at one point he asked me why I was there. I felt almost ashamed as I stumbled through my answer that it had turned out to be nothing and I was going to be fine. He just nodded and looked away. It was a really long night as I stared at the curtain between us, understanding how little separated his outcome from mine. He was fighting for his life. I was going home. Even though we barely spoke, when I left the hospital the next day, I left carrying that young man with me. That promise I'd made on my living room floor now felt like a debt I owed. After the hospital released me, I wasn't quite sure what to do next. How do you show up for people? Where do you even start? So I thought about the people that had made a difference in my life. One name kept coming to mind. I remembered Mike. About a year before my diagnosis, I worked on a large consulting project. Everyone was putting in 70 and 80-hour weeks. Mike was my manager. It was a Saturday night and everyone was working hard towards an important deadline. I had a big triathlon early the next day, but I'd already decided I was going to skip it. I didn't want to leave the team shorthanded. It was getting late when Mike came by my desk and looked at his watch. "Guttman, you've got a race tomorrow. Wrap it up and get out of here." I politely pushed back. "It's okay, Mike. It's not that big a deal. There'll be other races." Mike looked at me and smiled. "That wasn't a suggestion, Dave." He stood at my desk until I finally packed up and left. At the time, I thought he was just being nice. I was surprised he even remembered I had a race. Now I understand what he was trying to show me. It wasn't about the race. Mike understood that the race was important to me, which was how he showed me I was important to him. People need to be seen, not for what they do, but for who they are. I used to think leadership was about being the person everyone looked up to. Now I know it's about being the Mike in someone else's story. Over the last 35 years, that's what I've tried to do. I've built companies. I've mentored hundreds of people. I've tried to see every one of them the way Mike saw me. But of all the lives I touched, one stands out above the rest. A few years earlier, I'd been asked to take over a troubled division at one of my companies. Jake was one of my first hires. It was only a customer service role, so I was surprised he took the job. Looking at his resume, he was clearly overqualified. About 2 months into the job, he sent me an unsolicited 16-page document outlining everything that was wrong with the division and how to fix it. I have to give it to him. It was a gutsy move. He had 2 managers between me and him, and he took a big risk sending me his write-up. But I read every word. His analysis was spot on. I restructured the entire division based on his plan, and I promoted him to run it. My CEO thought I'd lost my mind, giving so much responsibility to someone so young. But within 6 months, we went from hemorrhaging cash to making over $5 million a year. But that's not why I share his story. One day he told me why he'd taken the job in the first place. He'd gotten laid off during the recession and for months got turned down at every job he applied for. He had a new wife and a young child and wasn't sure how he was going to provide for them. He said it got so dark, he thought about ending his life. That's when he told me, "You were the first person who really believed in me." He wanted to say more but couldn't. That's when I realized I had the answer to my question that bothered me all those years ago. What's different because I was here? Jake was different. Not because I promoted him, not because he made more money, but because I saw him. Because I showed him he mattered. I still think about that young man in the hospital, the one who lost his leg. I wish I knew what happened to him. I wish I could remember his name. But 35 years later, I remember Mike's name. Because when we choose to see someone, really see them, we don't just change one person. We create a ripple effect, like Mike did for me, like I did for Jake. I didn't lose my ambition. I just channeled it into the people around me. And that success I'd been chasing, it came anyway, but it came as a side effect of living a life that mattered. Because the measure of a life isn't what you build, it's who you leave better. I was so fortunate. I got my wake-up call while I still had most of my life ahead of me. Most people don't get that lucky. Don't wait for your 6 words. Thank you.